with demand expected to come back, the question remains, does this mean the economy is back on track?
Companies now, after experimenting with offshore in places like India, Philippines, and Poland, want to bring those jobs back.
We invest in the U.S. We're the biggest exporter in the country. In the cycle we're in right now, we're creating jobs.
From Radio America, it's Neil Asbury's Made in America, the show that explores American industry, large and small, and promotes American-made products everywhere. Put Neil Asbury's Made in America to work for you.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, as if there's not enough going on in the world and in our country right now, this virus, the coronavirus, is really scary. And I got to tell you, I was around in Hong Kong back when the SARS virus.
I was over there too.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I was living in Asia at the time, and what happened to not only Hong Kong, but China and all of Southeast Asia, and cases were showing up, everywhere in the world, including here in the United States, also Canada. I mean, it became a global thing. It really had a tremendous impact on the economy.
Well, they took it very seriously because I remember walking through Hong Kong airport and they measured your body temperature.
Airports, right? And you went through there and you say, "Oh my goodness!"
And you would show up on a screen.
And that's right. And if your temperature was elevated, I mean, you were quarantined. I mean, people were
you couldn't come through.
You couldn't come
through. They kept you out of the country.
You couldn't go back. You were put into these little rooms. I mean, it was scary stuff. I mean, walking through those and just saying, "Oh boy, I'm praying that."
I felt the same way. I said, God, I hope I'm not running a low grade
my
today
temperature
or something.
is not up a degree.
Exactly.
Because it's going to have huge consequences. But it will have huge consequences on the world, really, the world. I mean, how do you contain a city of 11 million people, Wuhan, right? So China, I mean, imagine that in the United States. Well, we have this.
We're going to stop Manhattan.
We're going to just close down New York in North Jersey and Connecticut, and we're just going to, quarantine the whole place. And by the way, all the buses and the trains and the subways,
they stop.
Everything stops. The airports are closed. Nobody gets in, nobody gets out. They could do that in China, but I don't think they'd get away with that over here. But what could that do to the global economy? I don't know. It's scary stuff, and something worth that we got to really pay close attention to.
Well, I think they are they are very much paying close attention to it right now. We have a case in the United States, and someone brought it back, and we will take this very seriously. CDC is on it.
Yeah, and what that could do to the global economy. And we talk about the American economy, and the American economy is doing very well right now. But, the fickleness of the markets, with something like this, how could they react, or in fact, how could they overreact potentially to this if it goes?
Well, pay attention to
far.
the drug prices. Pay attention to the stock market for like AstraZeneca and others and see what they're saying about this. Be very interesting.
Yeah. Hey, but let's get on to some small business news. And, our American small businesses create
backbone of the country.
The vast majority, the vast majority of jobs in the United States. It's the backbone of our country, and it always has been and always will be. But, large companies, especially when you get into these government contracts and specifically defense contracts, these large businesses are just kind of, they're ruling the world, right? And they're getting all the business. But yet Congress said, hey, look, you've got to give small businesses certain percentages of our contracts. And it should be that way. And it definitely should be that way.
Well, remember, Eisenhower warned a young JFK. He said, beware of the, military-industrial complex. And he was referring to, at the time, the large, big guys, the guys with literally the big guns. And they were controlling geopolitics. So evidently they're controlling the ability for smaller companies to get into the game as well.
And they're not fulfilling their obligation of content in these big contracts, including the Sikorsky helicopters. And, well, just think about it. Just think about what the Navy, just think about all of the airplanes and everything that the Pentagon, how many hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars
does
this equal? Our small businesses deserve their share. And by the way, they would provide a more competitive product, a better product anyway. Small businesses generally, and that's why they create so many jobs in this country, because they do things better. Well, we're very pleased to have on the show Lloyd Chapman from the American Small Business League, together with his attorney, Carl Olson. Lloyd, welcome to Made in America.
Thanks for having us on your show.
So you just won a very, very important ruling about small businesses not getting their fair share. How important is this ruling, and what will happen from this point forward?
Well, what we've exposed is that the Pentagon created a program in 1989 called the Comprehensive Subcontracting Plan Test Program. It had two elements: the elimination of all transparency and the elimination of any penalties for prime contractors for not complying with their small business goals. And it was a test program in '89. They've now been testing whether eliminating transparency and penalties for noncompliance is going to help small businesses for about 30 years, and they plan to test it until 2027, which I think is, ludicrous. So the notion of seeing if eliminating transparency and penalties is going to help small business is just absurd. But the notion of testing it for over 30 years, to me, is absolutely insane. So what we've uncovered is, as opposed to the 23% that American small businesses should be getting under the law, they're probably getting at the most 3%. And, about a few years ago, the Senate Small Business Committee came out with a study that says for every 1% contracts of small businesses go up, it'll create 100,000 net new jobs. So the law says small businesses are supposed to get 23. All the lawsuits I've won for 30 years and all the experts, the top experts in the country that I work with, all agree that it looks like small businesses are getting no more than 3%. So if we could get small businesses the full 23%, according to the Senate study, it would create 2 million net new jobs a year in America. So the government's only claiming to be creating 2.5 million new jobs, which I suspect is highly inflated. So if Carl and I can prevail and win more of these cases and force the government to give small businesses the full 23%, it would virtually double the number of net new jobs in this country. And I'm not an economist, but I would have to think it would have a significant impact on cutting unemployment.
Well, that's amazing, Rich. I mean, more than 2 million jobs, and these are really good-paying jobs. I mean, they're defense contracting jobs.
They're high technical jobs, and this is what we want in this country.
So these are not minimum wage jobs. These are jobs working for high-tech companies across the country that are involved in a variety of industries that are growing and that give people really great-paying jobs and careers, by the way.
This is interesting because we've been hearing also, Neal, and we've talked about this on the show for years now, that there may not be enough people, the right people, to fulfill these really high technological jobs. I mean, how does that work out right now in the industry? Are we in good shape?
Well, you know what? We're here in California, and it doesn't seem to be a problem here in California because so many people are coming to California. But I don't think the real problem is there's not enough people to fill the jobs. The real problem is I had a conversation with a former Inspector General for the Small Business Administration a few years ago, and he told me that the United States government small business program is smoke and mirrors. And I've come to see that there's a lot of truth in that. So as opposed to this program that Congress passed, during the Eisenhower administration, it's been, I would say, secretly, quietly dismantled a little bit at a time. I'll tell you something that I don't think most people understand. The Small Business Act is the largest economic stimulus program for the American people in history. It dwarfs, for example, you remember TARP, the American Reinvestment Recovery Act?
Oh, yeah.
Sure. That was a good one.
Yeah, they allocated $1 billion to small businesses. Under the American Reinvestment Recovery Act, it was $2 billion. Well, the Small Business Act, if it were implemented, would be $350 billion a year in perpetuity. So compare that to the $1 billion, the one-time shot $1 billion from TARP, and the $2 billion one-time shot from the American Reinvestment Recovery Act, compared to $350 billion every year in perpetuity. And
wow, that's staggering.
You talked about Eisenhower's military-industrial complex speech. Have you heard about Rumsfeld's speech the day before 9/11?
No.
Have you seen that?
No.
He said the same
No, I
thing.
should, because he was one of my heroes. I thought the guy was outrageous.
He said the same thing on September 10th. You can find it on the internet. And he talked about, at that time, $2.5 trillion could not be accounted for at the Pentagon. And in, I think it was the summer of 2016, the Pentagon Inspector General put out a report that said they couldn't account for $6.5 trillion. So, but Rumsfeld, he said, I can't remember his exact thing that he said, but he said something like that America's biggest enemy is the Pentagon bureaucracy. But you can find that on the internet. I think if you Google Rumsfeld 2.5 trillion unaccounted for, that'll pop up. It's also my website, ASBL.com and LloydChapman.com. You can go to either one of those websites and find that video. But
and one of the things,
Lloyd, just stop there for a second. We got to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back. But we're on with Lloyd Chapman from the American Small Business League and his attorney Carl Olson. We're talking about small business and how they can get and participate more in these very, very important contracts and deliver incredible value to the American taxpayer. Stay with us. You don't want to miss it.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neal Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we are together with Lloyd Chapman from the American Small Business League and his attorney, Carl Olson, and they have just won a very, very important court ruling to ensure that American small businesses gets their share, which has been approved by Congress in what they should be doing and what they should be getting in specifically in this case defense contracts, but it's really right across all government procurement. I mean, why isn't American small businesses participating at a much greater level? As we've just heard from Lloyd, if American small businesses was getting what they should just within the Pentagon, we would be talking about incredible amounts of jobs, 2 million jobs. I mean, good paying jobs that, people can raise a family on, enjoy
jobs we
their
thought
American
we
dream,
lost.
own a home.
Yeah.
Yes, in manufacturing jobs.
Yeah, that's what we've been pushing.
Hey, we talk about bringing our jobs back from Asia or from other countries around the world. Why don't we just get our jobs back from the Pentagon? Boy, what a concept that would be. So, Lloyd or Carl, what happens next with this lawsuit? And, how do you enforce? We should be getting 23%. You're only getting 3%. 20%. I mean, it's on the books. This is what's supposed to be done. It's not getting done. It just seems to be black and white. How do you force this?
I think one of the ways you enforce it is you shine a light on it and you try to get transparency. And one of the things that we found out in this case is that the government joined with the defense contractors to try and keep the public in the dark. In fact, at one of the hearings in our case, the judge said that the government was acting like a wholly owned subsidiary of Lockheed. And you had depositions in the case where there were like 7 people from the government and from Lockheed appearing, all to try and keep the public in the dark. And
but
then
what would be their incentive to do that?
Why
would the government do that? I mean, why would they do that? Why would they be so much in the tank for Lockheed?
It's crazy. I mean, most businesses, if you have a client, if your client tells you to jump, you say, how high? But in this case, the government is the client, and Lockheed's getting, $35 billion a year from them. But you have the opposite dynamic. When Lockheed tells the government to do something, the government says, how high? So it's crazy the extent to which the Defense Department is completely in the tank, as you say, for the defense contractors, and tries to help them keep the public in the dark. And what we got in this case, despite a ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court that was kind of in favor of big business, we got a ruling from the judge that said that when there are compliance reviews by the government, that has to be made public. And what we got is a compliance review that said a Lockheed report was not accurate. We also got documents in this case that showed that there was a, quote, huge gap between their goals for hiring small businesses and their actual performance. And it was very interesting because, you know, when the government comes out with a report that says they did well, they issue press releases about it. But when there are reports that don't show that, then they fight like the devil to keep the public in the dark and to keep the public from finding out information about it.
So let me ask you a question.
The American Small Business League is really a unique organization, and they are the ones that are fighting for the interests of small business. Even
so, doesn't it strike you strange? Doesn't it strike you strange that we have, you know, Lockheed really controlling? They're the controlling level of the leverage and what's going on out there, and they're trying to keep some of this quiet. Monies disappear. Lockheed gets contracts. The government, you just said, jumps as high as it can when Lockheed says, "Can you just jump for us a little bit?" And this, I mean, is this going to wind up as a Netflix movie in 2 years?
I hope so.
I mean, when you have big bucks like this and globalization like that, and money's disappearing and contracts are being let, man, I got to tell you, but the first thing I would think is, you know, who's making the money?
It's the big defense contractors, and small business, you know, as Lloyd said, is what should be getting the money.
Here's something, by the way, that I want all your listeners to hear. Right now, in America, 97% of all federal spending for acquisitions is going to less than 1% of U.S. firms. So the Census Bureau, by the way, says 99% of all U.S. firms have less than 500 employees, 98% have less than 100, and 87% have less than 20. All right? So I'll go with the 99%. So 99% of all U.S. firms have less than 500 employees. That means only 1% has over 500 employees. And right now, today, while we're talking, 97% of all federal spending goes to less than 1% of the firms. And according to the U.S. Census Bureau data, that 1% has not created one net new job since 1980, and many of them have paid no federal income tax for over a decade. I found a story last night. I think you can Google GE pays no federal income tax, and there's a story, I think it's on CBS, about 18 profitable companies that pay no income tax. So think of what the economic repercussions are going to be down the road if we continue to spend 97% of our tax dollars with less than 1% of the companies that haven't created one net new job since 1980 and aren't paying their taxes. I say it's going to cause a complete economic collapse at some point in time. I don't know if it's 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, but I think it's going to be a huge problem. And the sad thing is it's really hard to get the story out. We're thrilled to be on your show today because it's very hard to get this story out in the media.
Yeah, one of the things that we discovered in our case, you know, we asked the Lockheed witnesses, you know, has the Washington Post or the New York Times made Freedom of Information Act requests for this? And they said no. Only the American Small Business League is fighting this battle because it's stuff that it's hard to understand on a granular level, but you know, the ASBL really did expose how the big defense contractors are gaming the system. And
hey, Lloyd, unfortunately, we're out of time. I mean, Lloyd and Carl, I mean, wow, keep up the good fight. I mean, you guys are doing tremendous good for our country. And the metrics that you just mentioned about, the jobs, the lack of jobs being created, how much taxes are being paid, the loss of 2 million good paying jobs, all, because of this collusion between our government and the Pentagon, I mean, is totally, totally unacceptable. It's totally un-American. This should not be happening. Hey, Lloyd Chapman from the American Small Business League and Carl Olson, the attorney for the American Small Business League. We really appreciate you being on the show, but unfortunately we're out of time. But we'll check back in with you real soon. We want to keep up that fight. We'll report about it. You do it, we'll report it.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us on.
More with Dr. Rothman and I just in a moment. Still much more to talk about.
Made in America.
Sharply higher at the open, stocks continued to perform well over the course of the day Tuesday.
And I think that bodes well here over the next couple of years for having bigger demands coming to this country.
Now, more of Neal Asbury's Made in America.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neal Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, I mean, it is incredibly important that our small businesses are benefiting from government contracts, and it's not just because of our small businesses are the engine of our economic growth. It's because they provide really good products and very good quality products at a very good price. And that's why small businesses are the backbone of our economy. That's why they create 98% of the jobs in this country. And they make good products at a good price. So imagine if it was our small businesses who were pricing out the Sikorsky helicopters, right? Imagine if they were the ones who were bidding. Let me tell you, the prices would be a lot lower. They would be a lot lower. So now these large American industrial companies, like Lockheed Martin, is out there, consolidating a few small businesses, just to give them some face, I guess, or to just try to window dress with the government that they're attempting to bring small businesses into their contracts, which they're really not. But if they were, the American taxpayer would greatly benefit. They'd get a much better product at a much better price, but they're being shut out. And it looks like that our government, we just heard from Lloyd and Carl, that our government is participating in this sham. Actually, part of the defense, showing up with Lockheed Martin and arguing against our small businesses. Our government should not be doing that.
Right. And you're shocked that it's happening. Because I'm not. I'm not shocked.
Because what's the incentive? What's the incentive for these government bureaucrats to be out there? I mean, is it because they get good ball game tickets? I mean, are they getting great?
Yes.
Are they?
Wait a minute. Check off about 25 other things. That's exactly what it is. It's the whole concept of the swamp. This is exactly what's out there. It's out of control, and we don't even know who's making the decisions. I mean, this is scary stuff. I mean, seriously. I mean, think for a second. You're very, very correct. The small business market could really do a great job. And just because they're small doesn't mean they can't function like the big guys. Give you an example. Boeing. Now, we're just talking Lockheed, right? Now we're going to talk Boeing. They define the great technological company in the United States, right? So they create this MAX, didn't do very well, 737, trying to figure that one out. But in the last 2 weeks, they sent their rocket up, right? They sent the new Orion thing that's going to take us to the space station and get us up in space and really change it. And we don't have to go to the Russians to use their capsules and everything. It didn't make it. It fell short. It was a computer glitch. Something went wrong. And then, of course, Boeing comes out and says, no, that was great because it went where it was black. It went in space. Didn't go where we wanted it to go, but it went in space. And they're trying to spin that. The big Boeing. And who actually did get it in space with a very similar product? That's right, Tesla. Jesus, Tesla, the guy who owns Tesla, put his convertible Tesla, it's circling the sun right now. Boeing didn't do that, did they? No, they didn't do that. So what I'm trying to say in a funny way to make my point is that just because you're small doesn't mean you can't act like the big guys and you can't produce a great product. That's my point. Tesla is radically smaller than Boeing. But you know what? They're doing their thing. So is Virgin Galactic. So is Jeff Bezos. It's defining what you're saying in a way. Even though these are large companies, but in respect to some of these other technological companies, man, they're smaller compared to these big cats. But they're doing the job.
Well, they still have their entrepreneurial owners, running the show.
Well, but
that's a big difference.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the dynamic that you have in an SME, in a small to mid-sized company. You have guys like you, guys like me, and, thousands of guys all over and women all over the country and the world doing this because what is the story, Neil? They believe in what they're doing. They're passionate about what they're doing. If they succeed, they're smart in what they're doing. And you know what's really important? It means something personally, individually, to that entrepreneur.
Well, I think we should check and see who bought all the Super Bowl tickets.
Exactly.
Yeah, because $10,000 a pop.
It's not the ticket. It's the
not
suite.
Even for good tickets.
You got to think bigger. You've got to think bigger. If you're going to buy votes and stuff, you've got to go big time. You're not getting the Mary Kay pink convertible from Cadillac, are you? No. You're getting a suite at the Super Bowl. What does that go for?
Yeah.
Gazillions.
But it is scary. An incredible statistic that, these large companies, with these billions and billions, trillions of dollars of contracts hasn't created any net new jobs, and they're not paying any taxes.
That's outrageous.
And they're not paying taxes. Our small businesses are creating the jobs. And by the way, they are paying the taxes. And it is this creation of this tax base that pays for our highways and our bridges and our schools and our universities and our hospitals.
And the shovel-ready job. Oh, no, we did that already, didn't we? Right.
Well, it pays for all this stuff, Rich. And if you don't have a tax base, you're not going to have all these things that we need as a superpower, right? We're supposed to be a superpower in this world. We're not going to be able to be that if we're not creating the jobs and people are paying taxes as a result of those jobs. And you got these big corporate giants getting all this massive amount of business. They're not paying taxes. If we gave that business to our small businesses, they would create the jobs. We heard 2 million jobs would be the difference between 3% and 23%, the amount that should be going to small businesses, according to our Congress. They're not getting that. And if they were, we'd be talking about 2 million jobs.
Well,
2 million jobs.
Neil,
talk about an economic boom.
Do you think that's going to be an easy thing to do? Do you realize what you're challenging, what you're trying to take down in this conversation? And the guys that were just on, we were talking about with its attorney in this big case they just won. They're going after the power structure, the global power structure that is found within our country and in our government. And look what they're doing to our president alone, who's trying to figure this whole thing out and navigate through the halls of the swamp. It's pretty hard. The bayous, I should say, of the swamp, not the halls, the bayous of the swamp. And these guys are going after, why did Lockheed tell the government, jump? And they jump, to the moon if they could. Well, maybe they could if it's not on Boeing. But that's my point. This is so hard and so significant. And it's so obvious that you want to do it that it becomes almost impossible because you're challenging. I hope these guys check their cars every time they start it up. Just saying. I saw that on a Netflix. I did.
So, hey, Rich, we still got a lot more to talk about. But that was a very, very
I'm riled, topic. Man. I'm like really riled about
let's
this.
Keep that up because next we're going to check in with the Democrat primary, something else that gets your blood pressure up. You don't want to miss it. Dr. Rothman and I are going to be right back. Still much more to talk about.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, we talked just a while ago about the coronavirus and, how that is eerily like SARS.
Yeah, this is not funny stuff. This is serious. This kills
major stuff
badly.
And if this gets out of hand and, they don't have any way to stop it, and, it takes a while to find the right antibiotic to wipe this out, I mean, we're talking about a major financial catastrophe. I mean, very, very scary stuff. And, we're going to have to watch this closely. I mean, incredibly close. It could get out of hand, and it could happen.
And it happens overnight.
Yeah.
It happens overnight. It's not something that you can plan 2 months, 3 months out. You got to be on it right now. I mean, pretty soon they're going to have to call Dustin Hoffman and Rene Russo, who did really well. They stopped the Ebola in the movie Outbreak. They know what to do.
That's right.
Yeah.
We've been there before. No, we haven't. Not literally, but imaginatively, we've been there before, and that was super scary just to watch a movie about it, which never happened, obviously. But it showed, how quickly it can get out of hand.
Yeah.
And, what that would do to the economy. Think about a city of 11 million people, Wuhan, right? 11 million people. Think about how many people have been there over the last 30 days and how many people have left there, because they went there to visit and they're gone. Just think about how many Americans was in that city of 11 million who happened to visit and happened to leave, or others from Canada, from
anywhere,
Europe,
just anywhere, because we're such a transient global society.
Well, yeah,
and that's the danger. It's sort of like having chemical warfare. Or viral microbiotic warfare. Because if you get somebody sick and they get on a plane, they go here, each person on the plane is inhaled and ingested the microbes. They get out, take another plane, go through an airport, whatever. You get the point.
Well, I got to tell you, right now, the China government.
It's an algebraic expression.
The China government right now is freaking out. I mean, they're freaking out. To close down a city. And now they've closed down the surrounding cities around it. I mean, it's not just Wuhan anymore. To take that drastic measure, I mean, they're scared. Something's going on, and we know that the China government isn't very transparent.
That's my point. I was going to get to that point. You beat me to it, but you're right. In the past, they were very, very quiet about this, but now they're not. Maybe they really need our help on this.
Yeah. Well, they need everybody's help on this.
11. Can you imagine 11 million sick people?
Yeah.
If it just stays within it and festers, I don't think I'd want to cover that. Oh, these news people going there. It's not a great idea.
So anyway,
send a drone in. Send a drone in.
We got to watch that because we talk about the economy and how well the economy is doing, and it's some event. I mean, it would be kind of unimaginable, something that you can't even think about. I mean, you talked about SARS many years ago, and that was like a really, really important issue. But I mean, it was just totally out of our thoughts for so many years, and now all of a sudden it's back. Big deal. Hey, we're going to switch gears and talk about something that would be also devastating to our economy, and that is if Bernie Sanders actually pulls this thing off. I got to tell you, man, and you look at the guy, and, he's just, he's Bernie, and he doesn't look very presidential. I mean, he gets all rattled and, just goes off on his tangents.
He's a very unhappy man. Have you noticed that? He's an unhappy man.
Look, I mean, the poll, he's up double digits as of today in New Hampshire, right? He's kind of pulling away with that. And, of course, it looks like he's in a very tight battle for Iowa. He's probably not going to do very well in South Carolina. Everybody believes that Biden's going to win that. Bernie is very, very competitive in Nevada, and then it becomes Super Tuesday. So, this thing is still wide open. I don't know what's going to go on with this.
I'm baffled by the whole Democratic platform.
But look, the Democrat elite, the elites, as personified by, Hillary Clinton, that Democrat elite.
Yeah, she's a physical manifestation of that. And she really horrible thought.
Well, talk about someone who's really rattled, or a group that's really rattled. The Democrat elites don't know what to do with this. They don't know what to do.
The media doesn't know what to do. They don't want. They don't want. They don't want
Bernie.
They don't want Bernie.
And he's got a point. He says, look, the media's stacked against me. Well, now he knows what it feels like to be a Republican. But, Hillary comes out the other day and says, nobody likes this guy. The guy's done nothing. He's a loser.
He's a loser. And by the way, he doesn't look very healthy. You know what I mean? What a backside. And he's old and he's infirm and I don't know. I don't think he can make it.
Yeah.
My God.
But, when that
They're
starts
eating
to happen,
their own.
You got the liberal media. Now you got Hillary and her gang. going after Bernie. Everybody's going to be going after Bernie here.
Tulsi Gabbard's going after Hillary. I mean, this is like Ghostbusters. Everyone's going after everybody else in this whole thing. But I still can't understand anything about the Democratic platforms and what they're offering America. I sit there and I try to be objective, which is pretty hard for the Democrats, and I can't understand anything they're saying that will inure benefit to this country or anybody listening to us right now. No one. Nothing. Not one thing. And yet Biden is getting more and more African-American congressional people. You know, four more members of the Congressional Black Caucus is coming in. He's got 15. And what is he offering African-Americans? I don't get it. Nothing.
Hey, Rich, you know.
Nothing.
Save that thought for a second. We're going to have to take a quick break. More with Dr. Rothman and I just in a moment. Still much more to talk about.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neal Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So Richard brought up a very important point. 4 more African-American members of Congress now endorse Biden. I guess that's up now to 15. He's really doing well with the African-American community. I don't know what he's actually ever done to help them and to support them. I mean, it was a big thing even during the Obama administration. African-American employment was very high.
It was the highest.
It was
highest unemployment for African-Americans, highest unemployment for teenage African-Americans for those summer jobs.
It was like it was over 30%.
It was horrible. We had more people on the poverty rolls in this country, you know, underneath the Obama Biden administration. So I asked the question again, what do they offer any minority out there? What are they going to do for them? I don't hear what they're going to do for them, except, oh, wait a minute, we can give you programs. Well, good Lord, we've been doing that since 1965 in the war on poverty. $22.3 trillion going into the war on poverty, and we cured no poverty. So money's not the answer.
And they call Biden a moderate. You know, I don't know what a moderate is anymore on the Democrat side. I mean, he was out there the other day talking about, well, all illegal aliens, and then he quickly had to correct himself and said undocumented immigrants. Okay, there was, you know, from illegal alien. He caught himself. I mean, oh my goodness, how could have I said that?
Oh, terrible.
But they should all get health care.
Oh, yeah.
Free health care. They should all get health care. And the other thing that he brought out was that they should all get some sort of reparation because under the Trump administration, we made it so difficult on illegal aliens to come to the country, and they've had to go through this sort of humiliation and all these things.
I know, it's horrible.
And it's, you know, it's really impacted, you know, psychologically, and it's been very terrible.
Probably the 2,200-mile walk didn't affect them at all. Yeah, I'm sure.
But the way that they were treated, and therefore, you know, we should make reparations for all these people who are coming here illegally. And you know, who's going to pay for that? Well, it's the American taxpayer, obviously, going to pay for that. And who's going to pay for the health care? Well, it means that everybody else health care is going to be more expensive, and the quality of health care is going to be degraded because, I mean, that's just it, right? You can't, you know, have the same system and put millions of people more in and expect there's no consequences.
Remember,
with no money.
Obamacare, they were talking, you're going to have health coverage. They didn't say health care. You're going to have coverage. We need health insurance for everybody. It doesn't mean you're going to get health care because you're going to flood the system and the health care will collapse. But I think when you think about this, take this out for a second. You're saying free health care and reparations, and then another one of the platforms for Warren and Biden, and I don't know about Biden, but certainly for Sanders, is we're going to absolve everybody of their loans to school. All school loans, which is huge. It's the next huge bubble to burst. We're going to take care of that. Except now at town halls that they're having in meetings, some of the folks, the average Joes and Janes, are saying, wait a minute. I paid off my son's and daughter's loan, so can I get my money back? Well, how do you think people are going to feel when you go, well, how about somebody who didn't go to college, got an apprenticeship, which is a great idea, became a really successful electrical person or a plumbing person or a technological person, and they're told, well, you have to pay Bobby, you know Bobby across the street you grew up with, and he went to Cornell and he had to pay for all this stuff, and it's really expensive, and it's, $52,000 a year for tuition and all this other stuff. Well, you're going to pay part of that. And the guy says, wait a minute, I don't want to pay part of that. I didn't go to college because I didn't want to incur the debt. I wanted to learn a trade. I'm doing well. Why should I give it up? Well, it's only fair. See how long that goes.
Yeah. I mean, this is.
They're starting to say it now.
And enter Mini Mike. Well,
I can't wait till Trump goes one-on-one at some point with him. I mean, that is, Mini Mike he's a little guy. He is a little guy.
But
Napoleonic, but little.
But I see Mini Mike as many ideas, right? Because what does he believe in? Because when he was a mayor of New York, which I liked what he did in New York. I thought he was a good mayor in New York. Not about the big gulp and the sugary drinks and all the nasty
and the no salt
stuff,
because salt's bad for you
and all of that.
French love him for that.
No texting while walking and all this kind of thing. But
that's probably a good idea.
Yeah, but once you walk into a lamppost, that's gonna kind of be self-correcting.
No. Maybe on the other side, that's like survival of the species and natural selection. So the morons get taken out, and the people who realize I shouldn't be crossing 42nd Street, reading and looking at my phone because what it comes on the street. Oh, that's right, cars, and the car may hit me. So those people get wiped out. It makes a better society, a smarter society. They don't have to go to the gulag to be, reconditioned.
Oh, that's another.
They don't have to go to, like Bernie's guy said, hey, I endorse gulags. That's going to go really. Where is he now?
Or armed revolution.
Yeah, it's fine. They're all okay with that. Yeah.
Did you hear that one?
Yeah, no. Now there's a lockdown
in the media,
in Bernie's camp. He can't do anything.
And even the liberal media can't overlook that one. So they had said that, you can't be responsible for all the people who are, kind of following it. Well, this guy was a paid employee.
Yeah, imagine if that was in the Trump campaign.
This is paid employee.
Oh, my God, they go insane.
Hey, Rich, we're getting told by Phil, and everybody has to listen to Phil, that we're out of time.
Phil is the deity.
He is the guy that we must always listen to.
We have to listen to him.
Otherwise, I don't even want to think about otherwise.
Pull the plug.
But we are out of time. But we will be back again next week for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.